Hi everyone, Nancy L.T. Hamilton. Thanks for coming to my jewelry studio. Today we're going to be creating a faceted or cabochon stepped bezel marquise stone setting. It's a mouthful, this little guy here. And I hopefully have simplified the process enough that it's not frustrating and too challenging for many people. It's a 3-part series. This video is only on making the setting. The second video will be on creating this ring that we're going to solder our setting into. And the third video is going to be on how to set the stone. So I'm really glad you're here. We've got a lot to do. Let's head on over to the bench. See you there. The first thing we want to do is measure. Since this stone is an unknown, we're going to measure everything. I like to use a steel block because it keeps both my calipers flat and the stone flat, and hopefully we get a more accurate measurement. So this is a 7.99. We can write that down, 7.99 length. And then we want to come in with our width, same process, 4.03. And then we're going to measure the height of the stone. For this, I like to stick the tip into my wax stick and come this way, make sure that it's sitting level in there, and that's 2.80. So now we're going to do the hard thing. I'm going to take this stone and stick it sideways in here, and I'm going to grab a Sharpie. I'm going to run a black line along the bottom of the girdle. Just makes life a lot easier. There's our black line, and I'm going to take my millimeter ruler and I'm going to put it on the black line, and it looks like it's 2 millimeters from the bottom of the girdle to the Q-lip. That's called the pavilion depth or height, and that's an important measurement because that's how this has to be a minimum of that 2 millimeter height. Otherwise, the Q-lip of the stone will stick out of our setting. It's very difficult to find step bezels that fit all your stones. So you're going to have to learn how to make a double bezel, and I will, of course, help with that. All right, on to some math. You knew it was coming. I don't know why you're surprised. Stop it. Okay, so if you're making your own bezel strip, what you want to do is your outer bezel, the taller wire, is going to have to be minimum the height of your stone. I would, like my stone's 2.80, I would go ahead and round that up to 3. For your internal shoulder or internal bezel, you'll need to make that the distance. Remember, we had our 2 millimeter pavilion height. That internal one has to be a minimum of 2 millimeters. Otherwise, the Q-lip's going to hang out of the bottom. So I'm going to round this up to 2.5 millimeters, especially if you're cutting this strip with a saw. I would even maybe go so far as to make it a 3 and file it down to a 2.5. It's better to have a little extra material hanging out. Of course, if you're working with a high carat gold, you might want to shave this down to like a 2.2 or something like that, if you're into crazy making at the time. So we know now that our inner, make us a fancy side cutaway of our stepped bezel. So this we know is going to be 2.5 millimeters. And we know that this has to be at least 2.80. Well, we can actually do a formula to determine the minimum height for this top, for how much should stick out past the inner shoulder. And that calculation is you take your stone's depth, 2.80, and you multiply it either by 1/4 or 1/3 of that stone's height. So I'm going to go with 1/4. I don't need tons of material. So So 2.80 times 0.25 is 0.7. So that means that at least 0.7 millimeters needs to be sticking out above the shoulder. So this shoulder, if I added these both together, would be 3.2 millimeters if I was making the both of them from scratch. Does that make sense? I hope. In a case like this, I would probably just go ahead and do this at 3.5 for my outer and 2.5 for my inner. To make strips, if you can find them in the width you need for the project you're working on, great. I've also used square wire and rolled it out in my rolling mill and made some strip with that. You have to anneal it and then straighten it because it gets kind of wiggly. But that's another option. I'd start with something like 12 gauge square, see how it goes. What we want to do is, this is my inner bezel, this 24 gauge sterling here. So that's going to be 2.5. And what I want to do is use my square edge over here, which hopefully it's square. And I'm going to, the most accurate way is to set your calipers to 2.5. And I have found that dragging towards yourself is more accurate, and I don't slide off. I'm accurate in the sense that I don't slip off. When I go like this, for some reason, I tend to slide off. So here's this mark. And then on the other piece, we're going to set to 3.5 and do the same thing. Make sure you have a square edge. Drag it towards you. Another option is when I use the dividers to mark, I like to put the one leg on the just slightly left of 0 and then bring these in to the size that you need. Bringing it on the outside of the measurement gives you more accurate because you have to account for the thickness of the dividers, and putting it outside the 0 line will do that. And then you can either, well, after you mark these, I like to use my square and line it up down here, and I want to also make sure that I leave just a hair for the point of the pen. So mark it with a square, and in this case it looks like it's pretty much almost on the line, so I would probably cut it right about here. If you're sawing, you want to make sure you saw outside to the left of this line, so that you have extra room to drag this down. Files, probably a big hand file would be most beneficial because you can just lay it flat and do this and then flip. It tends to square up much better if you use a large file. Instead of pushing it over, you drag the metal on it. It seems to work better for squaring things. Often I have to slightly adjust even the stuff that I do on the shear because I can't always get it in there perfectly, and so I have to check. And let's talk about that. So if you want to make sure that your pieces are square, you want to take your digital calipers and move down the metal to see what the differences are. If you're off by 0.001 or 0.002 of a millimeter, that's not that big a deal. So that's how you check. For this part, it's a little use your own judgment kind of thing. This stone, you can see, fits from point to point, and there's no gap around the edge of it. There's no space in here. Let me show you if I go smaller. There's a little gap in here, which means that this is too big for this opening. So I went with this one here because there's no gap. So then, due to the thickness of the metal that makes up the bezel, I go up 2 sizes, and this will be the size punch I want to access. So then I've been using jump ring mandrels. This one I know fits in here. This is 11 millimeters, and so that's going to be my punch for shaping the exterior bezel. You can also use your stepping punch mandrels to anything that'll fit: rods, round mandrels, round pieces of steel, whatever you need. I'm also going to use this in conjunction with a swage block. You can use metal or you can use steel, and this, I believe, is the arc that works for me the best. You want to make it so that the shape kind of reflects the shape of your stone. So you can put your stone on its edge, place it in the swage block, and hopefully it will match or be very close to the curve of your stone. Now we're going to form our strips into curves that are going to fit around the stone. For the outer bezel, I'm going to be using an 11mm mandrel. You can use it in a swage block, or you can put this in a vise and hammer around it like you would a ring shank. For the 2.5mm strip, we're going to be using a 9.5mm mandrel, and we want to make sure this is perpendicular. Now we're going to push this a little over to the right. It's not going to sit on there nicely, so you're going to have to kind of futz with it. Push it over a little more. Once again, it's going to sit funky. And if your metal is thin enough, you can actually just push it in like that. I like to make enough for both pieces. Turn it, hammer it down again. All right, so when we look at this, we don't want to see this like that. You see? We want it straight in line with the rest of the metal. And this should be enough to complete both sides of the Marquise outer bezel. And then we're going to do the same with the inner, except we're going to be using the smaller punch because we want to create a slightly tighter, smaller curve. All right, so now we're going to go over and we're going to measure this against stone and mark it and create two pieces out of this. All right, so I have put down some double stick tape here because it makes life so much easier. And we're going to pop our little marquee here, take our curled inner bezel. Okay, I want about 1mm off the tip on both sides. So I'm going to make a mark here. Okay, so then we're just going to clip this little darling. And I want to make sure that this is perpendicular to the clippers, that I'm cutting a pretty straight little edge there. And then I want to cut another piece that's the same size. There we go. We can put it here, or we can try stacking it on top of this one and then marking where they overlap. I'm going to put it on here though because I'm having to stand a bit far away due to camera imposition. So once again, about 1mm past on both from the points. Hopefully your stone is even. Okay, so now theoretically we should be able to line these two up, and these should be of equal length, relatively square across the ends, and the same curve. And then we're going to do a similar thing. We're going to put this here, and then we're going to put this curve around the outside of it. Line this up with your inner bezel. Should fit pretty tightly. Mark it. You can leave that other inner one in there. Did I get it straight? Sort of. Not bad. I've seen worse. Okay, and do I have enough of a curve here? I think so. And then we'll mark that and cut that. Okay, I want to show you these just for contrast. This is definitely a problem that needs to be rectified. Okay, they line up beautifully, except this end is longer than this side, and it's really important to try to get these as close to even as possible. How to do this without it moving: put it on its belly. And if your curves are not quite right, you can always bring them back into the swage block or your mandrel alone and go ahead and reshape them a bit. Okay, one more check here. They should almost look like one, like that. So now we're gonna do one last thing before we go over and solder these little love bugs. What we're doing is cleaning the surface. Carefully, don't distort the shape. All right, I have 4 pieces of charcoal set out here. Not charcoal, it's hard solder. And these are being held together basically by the, there's an attraction that goes on with, anyway, there's flux. I dip them in my flux and just help put them together like that. There's no, it's not necessary to clamp them or anything. So now we're going to solder. So it's going to get a little noisy or a lot noisy. All right. If the solder doesn't run all the way through the back, put it on its back. Don't flip it over and put the solder on the back side because it'll slip when it heats the soldering temp. So before we go on to beveling, we want to mark where we're going to bevel to. You want to flip the bezel on its top so that the outer bezel is against the stone. This is because the stone is going to be fitting inside. And as you can see here, I've already marked what I'm doing. Another fabulous drawing by Nancy O.T. Hamilton. Being facetious. This is our beveled edge, and these are the points of the marquee, and we want that bevel to come to pretty much midline on this stone. And then the other one will come to the other midline, and together they should make a beautiful bezel. So do that, and then what you're going to do is this, where the mark is going to be the low side of the bevel. So if you look at this angle, there's a high part here, over here on the top, and then the low part's on the inside, and that is going to be, this inside part is the one that's going to be the point of the stone will be centered on that. It takes a little futzing, and it doesn't have to be extremely perfect, but it has to be pretty dang close. Okay, before we go on to my exciting discovery, we have to make sure of something, and that is that we want these to be exactly the same width. So just to make sure, go ahead and drag the bottoms on some 320 and the top, just make sure everything's level. I made some of this strip out of square wire. They weren't always perfect. Okay, let's hope they're the same width. That's a little high right there, because if it's one spot's high, the other one piece is going to fall out. Okay, so on to the exciting part. So racking my brain, how am I going to make this beveling easy? I've done it by hand. It's very much a crapshoot, because when you're filing, even if you're holding it in a vise, we tend to swoop and turn and do all these other little weird things with our hands, so things don't come out quite evenly, and if you futz too much with the bevel, eventually it becomes too small for the setting. So using the miter cutting vise, having these hump up, and I'm using 24 gauge here. If you needed more points sticking out of the miter cutting vise, you could always use 22 gauge. If you needed less, you could use, I don't know, whatever, 26, 28. So what I want to do is I want to take the peg or the pin, push these up against it. Now we'll find out if these are same thickness. We're going to squeeze this together, just keep it really tight. So if you look down, you see these points are sticking out. We may have to do this one more time. Each time after we're done filing, each time we do this, it goes down a little bit more. So if we can't hit everything now like this, I can see is low, that inner bezel on that one. I'm not going to worry about that. We'll deal with that on the second swing through. So yeah, so I'm going to start with the mill file. Nope, and I did what I was just going to tell you not to do. You don't want to, you want to file towards the pin, so the pressure is on the pin and the pieces can't go anywhere. or you can file across like this. And we want to file until this starts slipping. Oop, it's starting to slip. There we go. Still a little over there. Okay, now I can't grab anything. That's good. I am going to switch to a halves file, which is bigger than a needle file. I have a needle file too that I'll be using. As the sizes get smaller, the grit gets less, or the abrasive quality gets less. Okay, now we're onto this. You have to go down to a needle file because you can still take things off at this level. I can feel it grabbing here. All right, take this out. Let's see. Now I'm going to have to do it again because you can tell this part here has not been filed down. So, got our block back, put these back down, face down. Just get a little push up there against the peg, squeeze. This is why we wanted to add a millimeter on either side so that we had enough material to put these bevels on. So now we're sticking up again and all our low areas are up. There's the one that didn't get beveled before. So this time it's poking up there and we should be able to bevel. So I'm going to do that and I'll see you in a sec. You'll want to check your bevel again after you've done it in the miter cutting vise. Look how pretty that is. Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. Even though it's rough, it's still a beautiful bevel. And so this is ready to go solder at this point. So that's what I'm going to do. So I've fluxed her up and once again, cohesion between the water and the flux holds everything together. I have 2 pieces of hard solder set out. One note, don't forget to put this with the inner bezel on the charcoal, otherwise you do the other way, the bezel could slip. So here's our little baby. She's all pretty. It's the back. Stone fits great in there. I might take it down just a hair on the top, but that's for another video. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you learned a lot and that this makes your life a lot easier. If you're going to be doing marquee settings, that is. Don't forget to stay tuned where I show you how to make this ring and to hold your marquee setting in. And also the 3rd video in the series will be the setting, how to set the stone in the ring. Don't forget to check out my store, nancylthamiltonshop.com, and my website, nancylthamilton.com. All right, everybody, ciao. Thanks for coming by.